Hi,
Am
Anvita.
I, yeah, am I audible?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So Pranav, I think we can resume as we have our followers who continue to join in. So hello everyone. As a part of our Men's Health Week special, we have Mr. Pranav Varma here on board with us, who is a therapist, a certified practitioner in therapeutic communities and environment models. He has done his master's in counseling psychology from Christ University and is currently a staff member at Mosaic, an academic therapeutic community that aims at learning and exploring therapeutic models, mental health, and relationships. So, Mr. Pranav, thank you so much for taking our time to be here today and to be a guest speaker for this beautiful session.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Anvita. And I'm glad to be here and to be invited here.
All right. So before we delve quite deep into the questions and the answers, what is it that what comes to your mind when when you were approached for this topic of speaking on men's health? What is the first thought that came into your mind to be the speaker for this topic?
Uh, I think honestly, it was a question of about gender and what that means to me. And
Yeah.
I started trying to just sit with these questions of what is my gender, what do I identify as, how the experiences that I might have had in my work with myself and with my clients, and I didn't really get a lot of answers. But I suppose it did spark quite a bit of thought in me as well, which I think I'm glad to share here with you today.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that, that takes us forward to the next question that as a male therapist, what is it that motivated you to pursue a career as a therapist in this particular field of mental health? Because there's so much of stigma and there's so much of taboo. Even though we've come like pretty far as a society, the way we are trying to break the gender norms and the gender roles, but there is still a lot of stigma as to certain roles are only for women and certain roles are only for men. So, what is it that motivated you that no, I want to go into this field and I want to be a therapist?
I I think there's different layers to that answer for me. That it was about different things. One is that I was at a point in my life where I was looking for something uh, that I could be competent at.
Hmm.
I was trying to find something that made sense to me in terms of a career.
Yeah.
The place that I was in, it didn't fit, and I was trying to look for something that fit better. And there was something about the idea of working with people, of engaging with people, um, that seemed like this is something that might work for me. This is something that I might feel comfortable in. Um, I think that was one sort of part of that, and the other part is that I was also looking for answers of my own, to try and figure out my own struggles and a space for myself. Uh, I think I came into this field trying to be as much of a client as I was trying to be a therapist as well.
Absolutely. And I just love how you made this comparison, where you say that even the therapists out there in the field, they are clients, they see themselves as clients. Because there's most often, there's this notion that if you are in therapy and if you are a therapist, you have that authoritative role and the client is there and you are here. But you know what, even we as young practitioners are learning these days is that it's not about client being there and you being here, but it's more about you collaborating together. And even as therapists, we need to be self-aware of our own struggles and to be able to, overcome those and be there for our client, not as an authoritative figure, but as a collaborator. So I really love that comparison that you made. And it's a beautiful story as to what encouraged you to move forward into this field. So now that you are, you are a male therapist, you work in this particular field, you are a certified practitioner. I believe that when it comes to, since our topic over here revolves around men and their health today, do you personally, have you ever overcome or encountered any of the male clients who were rather difficult or hesitant to seek therapy? And how has that whole process been? How has the whole transition been?
I I think I'm not sure if I could even classify that in terms of gender, because I feel like I've had quite a few clients, both of different genders, who've come in, and with some it has been a struggle, with some it was The struggle, I think, came in later, during our work.
Yeah.
But I think there is a struggle around coming into therapy because it is scary. It is scary to be vulnerable. It is scary to open yourself up, um, to another person, and to even to yourself.
Yeah.
And there, I think it there is a difficulty that men might face, because it's, for men especially, it's not okay to be vulnerable. Um, I mean, I think it's shamed for women as well in different ways. But for men, the thing is, the message out there is that you're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to show weakness. You need to figure everything out by yourself. And that, I think, that to me makes becoming vulnerable even more scary and even more difficult, because one, you've never learned how, and then the unknown just becomes all that more scary.
So, as a male therapist, as you rightly mentioned, the vulnerability is a factor that is common to both genders. And as you rightly mentioned, that when it comes to men, it becomes quite difficult for them to take like put off their guard and just be vulnerable. So, as a man yourself and being in this field, have you ever like resonated with them, or have you ever felt that like what are the steps or approach that you have taken as the male therapist to work with such men who are finding it quite difficult to be vulnerable in the therapy sessions?
I suppose as a therapist, the idea for me and the way that I've approached the work has been about patience and creating space. That the idea is that as long as I'm able to stay present, as long as I'm able to be to meet them halfway, then they have someone there to come and meet them. The idea is to create space and allow them to use that space at their own pace, because it is a difficult thing. It is a difficult thing to work on your mental health, and it's important that you take it at your own pace, because I think for me, mental health isn't about achieving milestones or fixing things. It is a journey where where you're learning to understand who you are and how you see the world around you, and creating things in that world around you that help you feel safe, that help you feel better about what's going on. And that is a slow journey. That you're supposed to take your time with it. It's supposed to be taken one step at a time.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned a really nice point about creating safe space. And once again, I think like, as young practitioners who are newcomers to the field like me, we've been trained that anytime you have a client coming in, or whatever gender, whatever age, it's very important. The first goal is to make them feel comfortable, to make it feel like a safe environment for them to open up. So now that we're talking about this whole concept of a safe environment, obviously we live as a part of a society, and we may be safe and feel supported and loved in the four walls of our own house, and maybe of that of the clinic as well when we're with the therapist. But what happens when we go beyond that, when we move out of our house, when we're out there in the neighborhood, in the community? How do you think it is for men to seek help, be it for the physical health or for the mental health out there? What do you think is the society's attitude towards them? What are the barriers do you feel personally, or you have observed or maybe experienced at your own self?
I suppose one of the biggest barriers is that we're not really taught how to talk about our feelings. We're not really taught how to name what is happening for us at any particular point. Um, speaking of my own journey as someone who, as a patient, as someone in distress, being from that side, one of the only ways that the way that I started was to start trying to be honest with myself about what was happening for me, and that itself took a while to figure out, because even though I wanted to be honest with myself, even though there would be times where I didn't feel okay, there'd be times that I was struggling with something, and I wanted to put words to it. I wanted to try and name it. I didn't have words for it, and some of it I figured out by myself. Some of it I got help from the people around me who were able to name something, and sometimes that clicked and I was able to take that in.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles, is that we don't really know how to talk about it to ourselves and to others as well. And if you don't know what's going on, then
Yeah.
you can't seek help as much as you might. The message is out there, right? That it's important to seek help, seek support. But then the question that comes up, and is a question that I've struggled with, is what kind of support do I want? What kind of support do I get? What do I need? And that's a big question, and that's, it's not one I had an answer to. It's an answer that I've had to work to get to some level, and I'm still figuring that out as well.
Absolutely. And I think awareness, so what I'm understanding from this is that it's quite essential for ourselves to be quite aware of what it is that we're feeling, and to be able to, as you rightly said, to be able to put it into words, or to be able to express it in a way that makes others understand as to what it is that we're going through. And then accordingly, it becomes a bit more easier for us to seek help. You mentioned about support and seeking help. So when we do, like, when it comes to mental health and when it comes to seeking support, we often talk about our friends, our partners, our family playing a huge role over there. So how do you think the support system is for men whenever they need to seek help? How do you think the support system behaves? And what are some of the problems or miscommunication that happens during that course of seeking help?
I that's a really good question, and I think I don't know if it has a specific answer. I think support systems and difficulties with them can come in so many different forms, because I've known people who are able to talk to uh, the people around them, who are able to reach out to friends and family when they need it, but struggle with that as well. Struggle with communicating uh, what kind of support they need, and I know people who aren't even able to, uh, who sometimes don't have people to reach out to because of whatever's going on, or whichever point they might be in their life. And yeah, I think I'm not fully sure how to answer that question in a satisfactory manner, because I think it can look like so many different things. Uh, Sorry, could you repeat the question? I think I've sort of gone off on a tangent somewhere.
Yeah, so the question was as to how does the whole process of seeking help from your own mini support system look like for men, from your friends, family, and partners?
I think I suppose the answer there is that it is different for each person trying to seek out support. That it I think it becomes very much trying to answer these questions of uh, what kind of help do I need at this point? That is it. Do I need relief? Do I need to just find a space to get away from this sense of overwhelm that is happening? Do I need a thinking space? Do I need someone who can help me, who can help sit down with me and help me think through what is happening? Or do I just need someone to listen to what is going on? Because I know what I have to do, I know what needs to be done, but right now the emotion is too much to get to that bit of action. And maybe I just need to be angry or sad, or sometimes even hopeless for a while, because the feeling is present, and it needs to be expressed or addressed in some ways. And I think help can look like different things, and I think different people in our lives can offer different types of support.
Yeah.
I know there are people in my life who I go to when I need some practical advice. I need some sort of like help in figuring out, okay, what are this? How do I put this into action? There are people in my life where I go to just talk about what's going on, where it is that, listen, I just need you to like listen at this point. I just need to get this out of my head because it's too confusing when it's in there right now. And yeah, sometimes it's also just about wanting some presence. Sometimes some days it's just about wanting some people around me. And
I
yeah, so I think
Pranav, you've
support.
like answered it. Yeah, you've answered it quite beautifully. Because I think you've mentioned like really amazing points over here, and even for our viewers, the one message that comes across from this answer is that help does not need to look in a particular manner. Like help is not always just seeking therapy. Help is not just always just telling your friend or your family member that I need a therapist and just connect me to a therapist. help can come off in so many forms, and you, as you rightly listed all of them, that sometimes it's just that you just want someone to rant to, sometimes you need an advice, sometimes you need an practical help to put things into motion. So I think it's amazing, and I think it's a beautiful message that all of us can take away, irrespective of our gender. I think this is something that even I can take away and understand, that when it comes to help, help comes in many forms, and it's all about identifying what kind of help it is that you want at that point, and having that strength to go ahead and put that into action. So it's really amazing that you mentioned that, and I think it's a beautiful message for all of our viewers as well. So now that we're talking about help, and we're talking about, taking actions and measurable steps, when we talk about, like, since our theme is on healthy habits and men's health, what are some of the action steps that you believe that men can take to preserve their own mental health and physical health these days?
I I suppose if I think about it for myself,
Yeah.
it started very much with that bit about honesty, that it was about forcing myself to be honest about what is going on, and especially about times when I'm struggling or when I need help or support. And because only if you're able to reach that point, will you then be able to move on to try and figure out what can I help to get. And I think aside from that, it is also about uh, trying out different things. I think even things that might not make sense to you, even things that might not feel comfortable. I think support comes in different forms, right? Like what feels supportive to you. Sometimes it is important to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and try something out and see how it works out for you. See, because I think when you ask that question of what are some sort of practical things that people can think about trying,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different things that can offer relief, or that can give you a space to think about stuff. A lot of people write, a lot of people paint or draw, or take up some sort of hobby or activity that helps support them in different ways. Uh, and I think it's about trying out these different things and seeing what works, and also looking at what is working right now, because we all build up these resources, we all build up these things in our lives which help us survive.
Yeah. I think, like, even now when you mentioned this point that, of building resources and understanding as to what it is that's working for us, do you personally think, like, as a therapist, having encountered several clients, do you think that there is any difference in the way that men cope with things versus the way women cope with things? And do you personally think that there is some correct or wrong ways, or what is your outlook on the whole situation over here?
So I'm not sure. It because I think if I think about people that I've worked with personally, or that I've encountered personally,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not really able to sort of put them into boxes so much. But I think that might also be because I haven't really met all that many people. There's a lot more people out there that I haven't met, and but I remember having some conversations actually, and maybe this is something that will make sense to people out there, whoever's listening right now, that somewhere men perhaps tend to connect more by bonding, by spending time with other people, by engaging in activities, and women have an easier time talking to each other about things, being able to verbalize. And I'm sorry, I think you'll have to remind me of the question again, because I've again turned myself around.
Yes. So I'll just repeat myself. The question was that, is there any difference in the way that men and women ask for help, or the coping strategies that they use? And is there any correct or wrong method as such, from a therapist's point of view?
Yeah, I think the first half of the question, I suppose the answer is I'm not personally sure. I've read quite a bit. Like I've read articles and things, and there is this general idea of how men and women seek help. That again, I think somewhere women perhaps tend to be able to talk about things more, and for men it's more about spending time with people and the more practical side of things that we focus on. Because again, the emotional side is sort of seen as taboo for men because it's associated with weakness and shame. And about the second question, I don't know if there is a right or wrong way to seek help. Um, it Sorry, just give me a second. I feel like there's many layers to this question in terms of right or wrong. I think there are definitely ways of supporting yourself which can be harmful to you, and I imagine we all do it to some extent.
Yeah.
Using substances, binge eating, binge watching, different things that as much as they provide relief, as much as they provide support, also perhaps take away from something from you to a certain extent. And but I don't know if I would call that a wrong way of seeking support, because somewhere it is giving you some value in your life. I think it's important to look at how it's harming you. It's definitely important to keep that in mind. But yeah, I don't know about about the question of right or wrong ways of seeking support, because I suppose personally, like my own personal beliefs, that I personally consider it wrong to hurt people. When you're taking support, when you're finding relief, that for me is something that doesn't feel okay. But something that I've had to learn, something that I've had to distinguish between, is reaching out for support and feeling like I'm burdening the other person. That may not always be true, because somewhere the other person is also offering you that space. So one of the ways that I've convinced myself to reach out for support more often is by telling myself that it's important to acknowledge what I'm being given by people, because that's not me burdening the other person, that's the other person creating space for me. And there is care in that. There is care and love in that.
And I think this is a beautiful point that you've raised, because I like, from whatever literature that even I have read, the articles I've read, at the same time when I look back at certain male friends that I have in my own life, I've always seen that the hesitancy that comes when it comes to opening up, when we try to get to the root cause of it, it's most often that I don't want to burden you. You are a human being. You have your own struggles. You have your own problems. So I don't want to add on to that. And even if I were to tell them that, no, I'm offering this help, I wouldn't be offering you a chance to open up if I wasn't in the right mental space. So I'm offering you this space. It's okay for you to tell me that it's not a burden. So I see that many a times, like personally, when I've experienced that, they find it quite difficult to believe and be convinced that it's okay to open up and for it to not be a burden. And I think that's a very beautiful word that you've used, that burden, I think. And that is a word that is most commonly used. Like, I don't want, once again, I don't mean to generalize or categorize men or, gender stereotype, but yes, most often this word and the usage of burden has been used. So yeah, I think, and as you rightly said, to understand that the other person is also offering you that space. The other person would not be offering you that space had they not had the capacity to handle it, and that there is love and care in it is a beautiful thing. And I think that's a very nice message for our viewers out there as well. Because most often we are quite hesitant to open up to other people, as we feel that we are being a burden or that we are unloading our burden onto them. And I think it's important for us to look beyond that and acknowledge and be grateful for the feeling that's there. Yeah, we have another comment over here where it says that male masculinity has trained us to believe that we are a burden. And I think, yeah, this actually brings us to our next question of the role that society has played when it comes to men seeking any kind of help. What role does society play, and do you think that we have progressed, or do you think that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done?
I mean, yes, I think the answer to that first part is that society does play a large role, and I think I don't want to delve too deeply into that, because somewhere that I will get confused between trying to figure out, okay, but where does society and where does the individual begin? But I think there is a large narrative there's a larger narrative that we all grow up in, that we all take in different ways, from things told to us directly, from things that we hear around us, from things that we watch and read, and taken in so many ways. And I think it's great that we are in a point where there is so much conversation around this, where there is it's awareness and thought that I feel like is going on, trying to figure out what these larger narratives are and how they affect us as individuals and as communities and groups. And I suppose that we have quite a long way to go as of yet. I don't know where we're supposed to go. I don't know what the end goal is supposed to look like. What a sort of utopic society is going to look like. But I think that as long as we are able to talk about it, as long as we're able to think about it and experiment, it's okay to be lost. It's okay to be confused, because that's how we figure out what we're confused about. That's how we get the answer, is by asking the question. And I think now at least we are asking a lot of questions.
And I think that's a really good start when it comes to change, asking questions, because as we rightly discussed at the start of the session, that it's quite important for individual to be aware of what is it that they are feeling and what is happening. And I think the only way that can be answered is if we are open to asking questions, not only to others, but to ourselves. And I absolutely agree with you when it comes to the whole question of where the society ends and where the individual begins. Because there's a lot of deflection also that happens, most often we will just deflect our problems or the source of our problems onto the society, the societal expectations. This person did this, they want me to do this and everything. So yeah, I know it becomes quite difficult, and I think this is another question that needs to be answered by the man himself, as to what responsibility comes down, like what the other responsibility that he has as an individual. So I think it's a beautiful answer that you have given. And we'll just wind it up with a last question. So now that we're on the topic of society and we're talking about change and progress, do you think that there is any steps that can be taken to break the stigma and taboo that exists in the society? And I ask this from a very societal perspective, not only therapists taking a step, but men themselves and people from every profession and occupation taking steps. Are there any way that we can overcome this taboo and break the stigma?
Again, that feels like a really big question that you've put in front of me. I don't know. I think the only answer that I have right now is what we've been talking about so far, about honesty and questioning things, that to be able to allow yourself to talk about what feels right and what doesn't for you, and to question that also, to question what feels right and why it feels right, and to question what feels wrong and why it feels wrong. I think as long as we're able to keep doing that, we'll get somewhere with it.
Absolutely. And I think, as you rightly mentioned, it all comes down to the answering the questions bit. And even at a societal level, it becomes quite important for us to answer those. As mental health professionals, do you think we are actively taking any steps in that direction, or do you think that there's not much importance that is being given to this topic personally?
I'm not sure. I think as a profession, we are becoming a lot more prominent, especially over through this last decade.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if and we're not united either. We've got our own differences in thought and idea, and our own confusion about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So in that way, perhaps we are adding to the conversation. So I think the same thing applies to us, that as long as we're able to question things and be honest with ourselves. And also, I think something else to add to that is to be able to listen to other people, to be able to try and understand where others are coming from and to try and connect. I suppose as long as we're able to do that, then we're all sort of moving somewhere, hopefully, in the right direction.
Absolutely. And as you rightly mentioned, listening as a skill is also important, because I think most in the majority of our session we've been talking about opening up and talking, and I think there's a lot of listening that also needs to happen, majorly, by men themselves or even by the support system, because there are many things that can't be necessarily verbalized, but if you listen and if you look at the subtle text, you understand that what someone is going through. So I think that winds up our session. As for the audience, if you have any questions, now is the time. You can put that question across in the comments, and Pranav will try his best to answer it. So we'll give you like 1 minute to go ahead and post your questions. In case anyone feels hesitant asking questions out in the open, then you can definitely send your questions personally. You can DM it to Mind Efficient, and from our account, we will send it across to Pranav, who will try his best to get back to you with the answers. So I think we can move forward then. Pranav, and before we wind up this session, I would just like to put across an important message out there, based on our conversation today, that it all comes down to asking questions to yourself and to others, being aware of what it is that you're feeling. And for all the men out there, okay, we do have one question over here. What is a healthy coping mechanism for men? Because Bollywood seems to set bad examples of smoking and alcohol. That's a beautiful question. Drowning in them might not be a healthy one, absolutely. So, Pranav, would you like to answer this question?
Well, I think if you're able to recognize that smoking and alcohol is harming you and how it's harming you, then I think you have somewhere to start with to try and figure out what it is that you get from them and how else might you get it. I think my understanding of it, and from my own experiences and like very much coming from my perspective, is that with smoking and alcohol, it is about finding relief. It is about finding some way to perhaps express what is going on, or to get away from what feels painful. Then it might be about finding other ways to do that. Because I imagine there are other ways that we get relief as well. For me personally, it's been about it's been different things. One has been reaching out to people in my life. The other has been finding things that give me joy. I quite enjoy cooking. I really enjoy Dungeons and Dragons and board games and things like that. It's fun. That gives me a sense of relief. That gives me something that helps me carry on with times where I've felt anxious or scared or ashamed or I've been struggling with difficult emotions.
Absolutely, and I think that answers it quite well. And it's a beautiful question that was raised because, of course, Bollywood or media in general, I think even when it comes to Hollywood or any other kind of media platform, it is always shown that, if it's men, if it's women, they seek therapy. If it's men, they'll go and they'll drink or smoke or engage in some kind of a promiscuous behavior. So I think it's quite important for us to acknowledge that and be aware of that. We have another question coming in. So that question is that, is there a difference in the way you help a man who reaches out for emotional support as compared to how you would help a woman, so that we don't perpetuate these societal stereotypes?
I think for me that it becomes a matter of figuring out what is comfortable for the person being approached and for the person approaching as well, that whoever comes seeking help and whoever's providing help, it becomes about finding a way that is comfortable for the both of you. That what is the kind of help that you're looking for? What would be helpful? Sorry, I think I'm going to go back to that question because
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah. Do you want me to read it again or? Can
Yep.
you access
Yeah,
it?
sure.
Yeah.
I can. No, I can see it here. I can see it here. So, is there a
Yeah.
difference in the way that I would help a man who reaches out for emotional support, as compared to how I would help a woman? Um, Me personally, I think not specifically. There wouldn't be that much of a difference, because for me, it always starts with that idea of creating space, with that idea of listening and trying to understand and asking questions about what is going on, what is it that you're struggling with, what is it that feels painful, and coming in from my own perspective of what might feel helpful, um, and giving that not as something for the other person to do, but something for the other person to think about, because I think it's important that they be allowed to reject that as well. Uh,
Yeah.
because then that gives you a question of, okay, this doesn't feel helpful. What do you think might? Like, does this give you an idea of like what else might feel helpful, or even a question of why doesn't this feel helpful? Um, yeah, I think that's what's coming up for me right now.
Yeah, and I think those are quite important questions that should come up, and I think answering those questions helps put things in perspective for us and for us to take the next steps. In case, do we have any more questions, audience? In case of any more questions, you can put forward it in the comment section. And as we're towards the end of our session, we will now take more questions. You can DM it to us and we can send it across to Pranav. Pranav, once again, I would like to thank you so much for taking out the time and opportunity to be here and speak with us about men's health. It was an honor for me to be here and hosting this live session with you, and I got to learn so much from you, a new perspective on how things are out there in the field. And coming all of this coming from a male therapist gives a new approach altogether. Thank you so much for enlightening us about this.
Uh, Again, thank you for having me, Anvita. I'm quite grateful for the opportunity.
And for our audience, I'm so happy that all of you joined in, and I hope that this session has been fruitful. One message that we would like, as Mind Efficient, we would like to leave you with is that it is okay to seek help. It is okay to seek support. As Pranav mentioned, that help comes in various forms. It does not always have to be to go out and seek therapy, but there are several other ways in which you can open up. It's all about answering those questions and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. So I really hope that all of those viewers that we had today, you got this message has been come across to you, and that you will now go ahead and be okay to approach others for help. And Mind Efficient is always there as a platform that offers help to individuals irrespective of their gender and age. So you can always hit us up as well. And once again, thank you so much, Pranav, for joining in today. All right. So now we'll conclude. Bye, Pranav. See you again.
Bye, Anvita. Take care.